The moment my husband looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Apologize right now or get out," a chilling clarity washed over me. He genuinely believed I would choose to stay and submit just like I always had. He never imagined, not even for a second, that I would actually walk away from our marriage, our home, and the life we had built together. The argument had exploded during a large family gathering at his parents' sprawling suburban house. The backyard was alive with the chaos of a typical summer barbecue. Dozens of relatives laughing loudly, children chasing each other across the lawn, the clinking of glasses, sizzling meat on the grill, and the thick, smoky aroma of barbecue sauce hanging heavy in the warm afternoon air. Years of buried resentment, subtle digs, quiet favoritism, and unspoken tension had finally reached their boiling point. By the end of that night, the entire family had picked sides. His mother declared me disrespectful, his sister branded me selfish, and my husband Mark, the man who was supposed to be my partner and protector, pointed toward the front door and issued an ultimatum he never thought I'd accept. My name is Hannah. I was 34 years old when everything changed forever. We had been married for 6 years. Together we shared a beautiful, energetic 3-year-old son named Oliver, who was truly the light of my life. On paper, Mark wasn't a bad husband. He worked long hours in construction management, provided financially for our family, came home most nights, and clearly adored our son. He would play with Oliver for hours, building block towers and reading bedtime stories in silly voices. But whenever his family entered the picture, something inside him shifted dramatically. The caring husband I married vanished, replaced by the dutiful son and loyal brother who would defend his family's behavior at all costs, even when it meant hurting me. For years, I had walked on eggshells around his mother's relentless criticism. She had an opinion on absolutely everything: how I seasoned our meals, too bland; the modest clothes I wore, you used to dress nicer; the way I disciplined Oliver, you're too soft on him; and even the gentle tone I used when speaking to our son, he needs a firmer voice. At first, I tried to be gracious and understanding. I convinced myself it was just generational or cultural differences. Then I practiced patience, biting my tongue during visits. Eventually, I simply stayed silent, swallowing my hurt, my anger, and my tears just to maintain surface-level peace in our home. That's just how they are. Mark would always say with a tired sigh whenever I tried to express how deeply their words wounded me, "You can't take everything so personally." And for far too long, I accepted that weak explanation because I loved him and wanted our family to stay intact. The day that finally broke me began like so many others before it. It was a bright, sunny Saturday barbecue. The kids were running wildly across the green lawn. Music drifted from a speaker near the patio, and on the surface, everyone appeared to be having a wonderful time. Oliver sat contentedly beside me at the picnic table, happily munching on a plate of fresh watermelon, strawberries, and grapes. My mother-in-law approached slowly, glanced down at his plate, and immediately wrinkled her nose in disapproval. "You're still limiting sugar at his age?" she asked loudly enough for several nearby relatives to turn their heads. "That seems a bit extreme, don't you think? Kids need to enjoy themselves." I kept my voice steady and polite. "We're following his pediatrician's recommendation. It helps with his energy levels and sleep." Before I could finish my sentence, Mark's sister Rachel jumped into the conversation with a loud, mocking laugh. "Oh please. Hannah reads one parenting article online, and suddenly she thinks she's an expert on everything. Remember when she tried that organic-only phase?" A few relatives chuckled. My cheeks burned with humiliation and rising anger. Normally, I would have forced a tight smile, changed the subject, and let it go to avoid conflict. But that day, something deep inside me finally snapped. I was utterly exhausted, tired of being the family punching bag, tired of watching my sensitive son absorb these toxic undercurrents, and tired of diminishing myself for the sake of everyone else's comfort. "I don't think following a doctor's medical advice should be ridiculed," I said calmly but firmly. The atmosphere around the table shifted instantly. Rachel looked genuinely offended. My mother-in-law crossed her arms tightly. "There you go again, being disrespectful as usual." The word disrespectful landed like a sharp slap across my face. Disrespectful? For simply defending my child and my choices? What followed was an overwhelming storm of voices. Relatives piled on one after another, each adding their unsolicited opinion. The narrative flipped completely within minutes. Suddenly, I was no longer a mother protecting her son. I was the ungrateful outsider attacking the entire family. I looked desperately across the table at Mark, my eyes silently pleading with him to speak up, to support me even once in front of them. He stayed completely silent, staring down at his plate. That silence hurt far worse than any of their cutting words. Then Rachel made another sharp remark about how I always managed to ruin family events with my attitude. That was my breaking point. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult anyone. I simply spoke my truth, quietly but clearly explaining how years of constant criticism, judgment, and exclusion had worn me down emotionally, and how painful it felt to always be treated like an outsider in my own marriage and family. The reaction was swift and brutal. The entire group turned on me at once. And Mark, he finally stood up, his face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. "Hannah, stop this right now. You're making a scene." When I refused to back down, he delivered the final blow in front of everyone. "Apologize immediately or get out." In that frozen moment, I looked slowly around at all the expectant faces waiting for me to fold, apologize, and return to my usual role. Instead, I stood up quietly, walked inside the house, gathered Oliver's belongings, and left without saying another word. That night, after tucking Oliver into bed and watching him sleep peacefully, I sat alone in our dimly lit kitchen for hours, replaying not just the day's events but every year of our marriage. I realized the real problem wasn't this single explosive argument. It was 6 long years of slowly erasing pieces of myself to keep everyone else comfortable. Around midnight, a memory surfaced. 3 years earlier, an old college friend named Sophia who lived overseas had offered me a promising job opportunity. On impulse, I sent her a message. To my surprise, she replied within the hour. The position was still available, and the company had expanded significantly, needing someone with my skills immediately. Over the next few days, I made the most difficult and liberating decision of my life. I quietly bought 2 one-way plane tickets, one for me and one for Oliver, to New Zealand. With Sophia's help, I began carefully planning our new life there, securing housing, researching schools for Oliver, handling all the legal paperwork for relocation, and carefully organizing our finances. Every single decision was filtered through one simple but crucial question. Is this the healthiest choice for my son? During those tense 2 weeks, I continued living as if nothing had changed. I cooked dinners, took Oliver to preschool, answered Mark's short and dismissive texts, smiled politely when expected, and maintained the routine. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was methodically building our escape route to freedom. Mark behaved exactly as I had predicted. He assumed I would eventually apologize and things would return to the dysfunctional status quo. He sent occasional messages about moving past this, and how his mother felt bad about what happened. No one, not once, asked how I truly felt. No one acknowledged the years of accumulated disrespect and emotional exhaustion. The night before our flight, Mark came home carrying takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant, clearly an attempt at a peace offering. As we sat at the kitchen table, he said confidently, "I think we've dragged this drama out long enough, Hannah." I looked at him quietly and replied, "I agree completely." He smiled with visible relief, certain he had won. "I knew you'd come around eventually." The next morning, while he was at work, Oliver and I left for the airport. I left a long, honest, heartfelt letter on the kitchen counter explaining exactly why I could no longer stay. I described how I refused to raise our son in an environment where constant disrespect was expected to be tolerated silently for the sake of family harmony. My phone started exploding with calls, texts, and voicemails as we moved through airport security. When I finally answered Mark's call once we were settled on the plane, his voice was shaking with disbelief and panic. "Hannah, you're actually doing this? You took Oliver and left." I looked out the window at the endless sea of clouds below us and answered calmly, "Yes. What's truly insane is expecting me to spend the next 20 years apologizing for having basic boundaries and self-respect." The months that followed were incredibly challenging, filled with loneliness, logistical hurdles, cultural adjustments, and the emotional weight of starting over. But something remarkable and beautiful also happened. Oliver blossomed in our new environment. He became noticeably more confident, relaxed, talkative, and genuinely happier. I too rediscovered a sense of peace and self-worth I hadn't felt in years. The physical distance eventually forced Mark to confront the toxic family dynamics he had ignored for so long. Several months later, he offered a genuine, heartfelt apology, not just for that terrible day, but for years of choosing comfort and loyalty to his family over protecting me. His mother and sister eventually apologized as well, though it came much later and only after they realized they had completely lost control of the situation. Today, my relationship with Mark is healthier, more balanced, and more respectful than it has ever been. Not because I forgave everything overnight, but because real, firm boundaries now exist and are honored. Looking back, the most powerful thing wasn't buying the plane tickets, moving to a new country, or starting a new job. It was finally understanding that respect is not something you beg for or earn through endless apologies. It is something you claim for yourself with courage. That night, when my husband told me to apologize or leave, he thought he was issuing a harsh punishment. He never realized he was actually handing me the key to my freedom and a better life. And choosing myself and my son changed everything.